for the subsidies. On the issue of the employer mandate, a lot of the retailers, let's say, that have low-end workers never intended to sign up. So with a year's waiver, they're not going to have to pay anything, and the Treasury's not going to have money to set this thing up the following year.
And there will be a lot of people who right now say, well, why not just scrap the individual mandate at this point? But the problem is that it's the individual mandate and its unpopularity that is the very hinge for the success of this program, of the idea of Obamacare. And what happens is there's a carrot and a stick problem to some extent. The individual mandate, the requirement for people to sign up, is the stick, as John was just saying, to get the healthier, the younger people in to lower costs for everyone. And what's the problem? Well, they don't want to go, and we're finding out that it's more expensive.
If they want to buy a Chevrolet instead of a Cadillac,
well,
I mean, that was always the issue here.
Exactly. And the problem is the marketing budgets, the educational. There's an educational problem, not just an operational one, as you put it. And so the cost of trying to educate everyone about these plans, and by the way, the penalties for those people who don't sign up in the first year are very low. So the question now is, if you give it another year when those penalties are higher, does that provide more an incentive to push people?
We're going to talk about the educational issues in another segment. Grace Marie, let me go back to you. And this whole issue of the lack of infrastructure, which we've been reading about, there's a good solid 30 states that never had infrastructure. How are they going to get around that? And how are they going to get around the financing issues if you keep waiving the day of reckoning, Grace Marie? That's what I don't understand.
You're right, Larry. The federal government has to set up exchanges in about 30 states, actually now almost 35 states, either on its own or in partnership with other states. They are waiting until the middle of September to let us know the details of those exchanges, and they're supposed to take effect on October on the 1st. So that only gives us 2 weeks to find out what the federal government is up to. And also, Larry, to this point about employers not providing coverage, among the phony budget numbers for Obamacare, pretending you could create this vast new entitlement and not have it cost the federal government any more money, that was partially contingent on most employers continuing to offer coverage. This gives employers another year to figure out how to get out of this business, and it is going to dramatically increase the cost of this law. Some of these subsidies are $13,000 a year for the families to get coverage, and you're going to have millions more people now.
Well, that's why you have this odd and, in my opinion, rather unseemly situation where the Secretary of HHS, Governor Sebelius, had to go around hat in hand, literally raising money for a government program, which is of dubious legality. Go ahead, John.
Larry, that funding issue, I think, is pretty secondary. Grace Marie, I think, has put her finger on the correct funding issue, the one that's most important as a potential result of this change, which is that if businesses who might be on the cusp of providing insurance, haven't done so in the past, we're going to because of the requirement, if they don't, and we go for a year with the exchanges, which will get set up, I believe that's less of a barrier than Grace Marie thinks. But if the exchanges get set up and people want to buy coverage, they're going to go into the exchanges and get the subsidy. So some of those employers may not ever offer coverage. They would still have to kick in some money when the requirement kicked in, but it would also increase the cost to taxpayers because of the subsidies that would go to the people who got their insurance from the exchanges rather than from their employers.
And also, I think very importantly, the delay is going to be expensive. This is, in effect, another year's waiver. Kelly Evans, just one more point. Grace Marie talked about it at the beginning of the show. The issue of hiring and employment. I mean, the Federal Reserve is focusing on jobs to change their QE and all the rest of it. You're not going to see anybody hire. You might see some temps hired less than 30 hours a week. Well, but if you're not going to hire people that are make the staff more than 50 people. That's all going to be put on hold.
We can tell a couple of things that are happening. We are seeing more contract-style temporary work. But we also, when we ask economists about this repeatedly, and you see this even in surveys of small business sentiment, macro is more important. So as long as the economy is improving, as long as that trend is still intact, it will sweep some of these changes along into the current with it.
And
but
Larry,
it doesn't
one
change
other
the structural problem that you pointed
But
out.
I think
Larry,
it does
one other
at the
point on the
margin.
hiring, though. The economists that I've talked to, from economists who advised Mitt Romney in the campaign to people like Austin Goolsbee, a friend of your show as well, say that the macroeconomic effects in terms of hiring are likely to be pretty small. The number of employers who are right around that 50 employee threshold is not that great. There's not that many jobs at stake. I want to, but there's one more thing at stake here, Larry.
With all due respect, pal Austin Goolsbee, who I have the greatest regard for him, you know, we don't know that. That's a very static view. In an economy that wants to grow and expand, whether it's a brand new business or it's a smaller business that's hot and wants to go, we don't know. There may be dozens of them. There may be hundreds of them. This thing takes its toll. I mean, you're talking about maybe 160, 70,000 new jobs a month. How do we know that that won't get cut back by 25 or 30,000? We don't know that. I don't know that.
I think, Larry, one other point that we need to make on this is the political point, and that is that the administration, in part, I think, hopes to get some benefit from delaying these penalties until after the 2014 elections. They've been getting a lot of incoming from Republicans. On the flip side, so that's a positive for Democrats. On the positive for Republicans, they're going to use this decision as evidence that the administration itself doesn't have confidence in the law and try to push harder against some of the things that they can affect. John Boehner put out a statement tonight saying this law is a train wreck, and the Obama administration just said so.
All right, we're going to leave
Larry,
it there.
can I make one more quick point?
No, I've got to jump out, Grace Marie. I'm awful sorry. We'd love to have you. We'll get you back maybe later in the week or next week and follow through on this, but we're flat out of time. John Harwood, thank you. Grace Marie Turner, Kelly Evans, we appreciate it very much. And once again, be sure to watch Kelly tomorrow morning on CNBC Squawk on the Street. That's 9 a.m. Eastern. That's where you're going to see how the market opens tomorrow. Now, tonight, the economic report's pretty good today. Question, is the economy looking better than we think? That is coming up. And also, look at these live pictures from central Cairo. The latest news from there is that President Morsi is not stepping down. He says he's the only legitimate leader of Egypt. He says this may cost him his life. This could get really messy, and we will follow it. And folks, please don't forget free market capitalism. It's the best path to prosperity. They could use some in Egypt, that's for sure. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back. Well, is the U.S. economy better than you think? 3 bullish data points out earlier today. Here's what you need to know. U.S. home prices jumped 12% in May from over a year ago. That, according to real estate data provider CoreLogic. Also, signs of strength in manufacturing. Factory orders jumped more than 2% for the month of May. And finally, car sales rose to their strongest rate in more than 5 years. All right, let's talk. We have Frank Sorrentino, Chairman and CEO of ConnectOne Bank. Steve Risciuto is the Chief U.S. Economist from Mizuho Securities. Peter Kenny is the Market Strategist and Managing Director of KCG Holdings. I think that just happened. And my great pal, Bob Lutz, is the former General Motors Vice Chairman. Mr. Bob Lutz, I want to go to you. Car sales are booming. 16 million units at an annual rate in June. That beats everything we've seen for years. And you're exporting a lot of cars. What's going on, sir?
Well, as I've said a number of times, you know, the low dollar compared to other exchange rates makes the U.S. a highly competitive place to build cars. The Japanese are transferring production capacity to the U.S., and the U.S. companies themselves are exporting a lot of cars to China and so forth. But what it is yeah, we do have a generally improving economy. First of all, we got pent-up demand. A lot of the cars out there were getting older. Consumer confidence is on the rise. Gasoline prices are stable. The housing industry is up, which has fueled pickup truck sales. And frankly, this comes as no surprise to me. I think we're going to have a very strong second half with a lot of new introductions. GM's got the new pickups coming out, got the new crossovers, and everything is just booming. And the used car market is strong. I really see a very robust automotive industry for the remainder of the year.
Just one quick one, Bob, because we're going to be short of time. It's a leaner and meaner industry. I was looking at some of the wage and benefit numbers, and boy, have they all come down. So we are very competitive in this country.
We're very competitive, and we've gotten rid of all the excess capacity. And you'll notice that when you said the industry 5 years ago, that was artificially inflated with a lot of bad daily rental sales, heavy discounting and everything. Nobody's doing that anymore. So now everybody is making money on the cars and trucks that they sell, which is a very positive thing.
Indeed. All right, Frank Sorrentino, are you making the loans for people to buy these cars and other loans and mortgage loans? And by the way, how do you see the economy?
Yes, and I absolutely agree with everything Bob said. As a matter of fact, I'm glad he's making all those pickup trucks because we need them for our home builders who are building at a record pace today.
You're making construction loans.
We're making more construction loans today.
You're making home purchase loans.
In the last 5 years, home purchase loans are up. We're actually seeing a real estate market today where there are bidding wars taking place, and that realtors are the biggest complaint that realtors have is that there's not enough inventory for them to sell.
Are you making business loans?
Yes,
particularly
we are.
to small local businesses, the heart of the economy?
At ConnectOne Bank, we're actually seeing confidence returning to the small and medium-sized business market.
All right.
So we're seeing it in the housing industry. We're seeing it in the small business.
Steve Risciuto, you got two bulls. Now, these guys know. You got a car guy who knows what he's talking about. You got a banker who knows what he's talking about. He knows so darn much. He's got a new name for his bank. Lord knows what he's doing. Are you ready to concede that this economy is really on a tear?
Now, when you look at this economy, the reality check is this. With all this great stuff going on, average growth between October and March was what? 1.4%. All the economists are paring back their growth numbers as well for the current quarter to 2%. Everybody's got estimates of 2.8% for the second half of the year. It's going to come in between 1.5% and 2%. We have an energy industry that's booming, a housing industry that's going to be up 20%, and auto sales are back to the pre-recession high, and this is the best you can do? It's all being done on financial engineering.
You had pretty good factory orders today. I mean, look, I'm not a roaring bull myself. I think we got a lot of issues, not least of which is our first segment's discussion regarding Obamacare. But putting all that aside, if, for example, businesses start making longer-term investments and the jobs numbers pick up accordingly, would that turn your view around?
Without a doubt, it would. The problem with this, though, is companies are coming off 4 quarters of very bad top-line earnings growth, which goes counter to everything that's already been said about the economy. And the upcoming data looking out for the quarter that's going to start reporting next week is showing another disappointing top-line revenue number. So I don't see where, with disappointing top-line revenue numbers, you get this idea that this economy is booming.
All right, well, that's fair enough. Let me go to Peter Kenny. if the top line revenue numbers aren't that good and the earnings aren't that good, and the Federal Reserve, I think, is changing policy. Some people disagree with me, but unless it's a disaster, I think they're going to wind down their bond purchases. How do investors play this, or is it just caveat emptor?
Well, I think there's no question that investors have to expect more volatility. But look, year to date, every major index has put in a really stellar performance. We have a third quarter volatility. I think that this tapering policy shift that you've referred to is definitely going to start taking place in the fourth quarter, but I don't think it's going to take place unless there's real sustainable signs of growth within the economy, whether it's housing, autos, finance. Clearly, PMI is suggesting
So good news is bad news. That's what I hear from you. I've heard this before. You're not alone. Good news becomes bad news because that means the Federal Reserve is going to tighten.
Absolutely.
But they're going to tighten not temporarily. They're going to tighten for the next 3-4 years.
Oh, yeah.
That's really what you're looking at.
Longer-term cycle.
How do you make money in that environment? It's very difficult.
It's difficult, but if the U.S. is the economy that is really the fastest growing in the world, relatively speaking, and we are definitely growing manufacturing, and you're looking to put money to work in hard assets like real estate and things of that nature, there's plenty of opportunity.
With a strong currency, which is very important, with a strong currency. You know, Bob Lutz, do you have any concerns that if all your optimistic prognostications and analytical practicing takes place, I've never heard you more bullish, actually, if all that is right, are you worried the Fed might snuff it out?
Yeah, obviously, if the tightening is too great or too soon, interest rates go up, that makes car loans more expensive and so forth. That could put a damper on it. My real fear is that with Fed tightening, it's going to increase the value of the dollar. And once again, the U.S. car industry would lose some of its competitive edge versus...
Already happening.
Exactly.
I'm going to lose you in about 20 seconds, but I'm just going to say it's already happening, Mr. Lutz.
Yeah, and that is, if you will, I think that fear is keeping some U.S. manufacturing executives awake at night.
All right,
Larry,
go ahead.
Let's keep things in perspective. Even if rates were to go up another 100 basis points or 200 basis points,
which they will,
we'd still be talking about all-time lows for U.S.
No, this is very important.
And home buyers shouldn't be scared today that their 30-year mortgage went from 385 2 weeks ago to 415 today, or if it should even approach 5%.
Are you seeing it
still?
Are the refis
in this country?
Are the refis slowing down? No, I understand. I get that.
Refis have
the refis slowed down,
but
the purchases, the actual purchases are still strong.
If anything, I actually think it's actually caused the purchase market to increase. People are concerned about that rise in interest rates. They shouldn't be. It's not a big deal.
Now, Steve Rasciuto, I gotta go. I'm sorry, I'm so tight for time.
Okay, go ahead.
If he's making loans to home buyers and he's making loans to small business, and Bob Lutz is seeing this tremendous boom in automobiles, I don't know how to turn you around here.
The reality is the income growth doesn't bear any of this out.
Yeah.
Income growth is not particularly strong. And what's going to happen is the backup of interest rates is going to cause a problem for the consumer. Yeah. They're not going to be able to be there to spend the money. And that's the problem.
The 100 basis points already.
Companies are making money by cutting costs.
It's cutting costs a lot.
Companies are making money by cutting costs. They're not making money by hiring people.
What's your job estimate? Income comes from jobs.
I think this number is 175,000. But I think a lot of it's part-time workers. And a lot of it's already people who are doing what was being done to delay the health care requirement. They're shifting to part-time workers.
Is 170. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kudlow Report. I'm Larry Kudlow. We begin tonight with some breaking news. Late today, the Obama administration decided to delay a key requirement of its signature health care reform plan. Let's get right to CNBC's own Bertha Coombs for all the details. Good evening, Bertha.
Larry, talk about some pre-4th of July fireworks. Business groups tonight applauding the Obama administration's decision to delay penalties associated with the Affordable Care Act employer mandate until 2015. The National Retail Federation among those who pushed for that delay, calling it a wise move. Employers with 50 or more full-time workers face fines ranging from $2,000 to $3,000 per employee if they did not provide affordable coverage. The Treasury tonight admitting in a statement that they had been listening to the feedback they've been getting from business groups, and they are taking action as a result. They hope to provide an additional year for all of these mandatory employer and reporting requirements to begin. They say it's going to allow them to consider ways to simplify the reporting requirements, and it's also going to allow time to adapt to the health coverage and reporting system that employers are using as they move towards providing more affordable coverage. Restaurateurs and retailers who have a lot of workers who work variable hours were the ones who are really feeling the pressure on this and face the biggest burden of the mandate. The American Benefits Council tonight saying this delay is going to provide some breathing room and help minimize disruption. The big question now is whether the government, as it begins its push to engage individuals to sign up for coverage on healthcare.gov later this fall, will now look at the individual mandate. Neil Trightwine with the NRF says he doesn't think that that's necessarily going to be delayed. And Cece Connolly with PwC says you're still going to see a lot of workers who are going to want to sign up for coverage either through their employers or through the exchanges. So even if it is delayed, that may not delay people's pent-up demand for coverage. Larry?
All right, very good. Thanks, Bertha Coombs. We appreciate it. Let's hash through this. Joining us now is CNBC's chief Washington correspondent, John Harwood. Co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk on the Street, we have Kelly Evans. And with us on the telephone is healthcare expert Grace Marie Turner. She is president of the Galen Institute. Grace Marie, I want to go to you first because, I'm sure the reporting requirements are a problem. But my view, in at least 30 states, there was never any infrastructure to do this. And I wonder whether they shouldn't delay the entire program, not just the businesses, but also the individuals for at least a year. What's your take?
Well, Larry, it really is a house of cards. And once they start to pull one piece out, then you start to look at all the other things that can go wrong. Individuals still have to purchase coverage. So they're not delaying that, even though that's the most unpopular part of Obamacare. And here you have this fiction that postponing this law for a year and the employer mandate for a year is somehow going to change employers' hiring practices. They're already laying off people. They're already putting people on part-time work. Gallup had a poll last week that showed that 40% are holding back on hiring. There's a hiring freeze.
Right.
Do they think that delaying this for a year is going to fix that?
Right. Well, all right. John Harwood, I want to go to you. And I want to ask this, besides this reporting requirement, besides the infrastructure problem, John, there's a funding problem here. There's a financing problem, as you know. HHS Secretary Sebelius has been going around with her hat in her hand, trying to raise money for all 30-plus states. This thing is falling of its own weight.
No, I wouldn't say that, Larry. I do think the administration is trying to narrow and fix its battles. Remember, they've got multiple things they've got to do. They've got to get the exchanges going. They've got to get individuals signed up, uninsured individuals especially. They've got a target of something like 7 million people to be enrolled in these exchanges. They need young, healthy people in to try to make the law work, keep premiums down for everybody else. And I think if you add on top of that the complaints, the difficulty of getting businesses to both understand what they have to do and then comply, pay money, $2,000 per worker if they don't offer insurance. I think they decided that the better part of valor was to set this one aside, try to focus on some other things that they can get done. But it doesn't mean that the law itself is not going to be implemented. Remember, the most important thing, Larry, to the success of the law is the implementation of the individual mandate, not the employer mandate, because most large employers already offer coverage to their workers.
Well, I understand that, but Kelly Evans, let me go to both points, okay? On the point of the individual mandate, a lot of young people do not want to sign up for one reason or another, and that was a big source of